right, good evening and welcome back. We are broadcasting live to bring you the much anticipated results of the UCP leadership race. In just a short time, we will know who will be the next Premier of Alberta. Of course, we have team coverage for you tonight, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the BMO Centre in Calgary, where the results will be announced. Right now, the first ballot results are expected to come in very shortly. Of course, originally we thought they were going to come in at about 6 o'clock. That has since been moved back. So at last word from the UCP party, we were expecting them about 7:30, so right about now. Okay, and so of course this race was triggered back in May when Jason Kenney announced he was stepping down. He got 51.4% approval in a leadership review, technically enough to survive, but he agreed it was time to call quits. And of course since then, 7 candidates have been working very hard campaigning leading up to this moment tonight. Now tonight, those 7 candidates who all have very different backgrounds and platforms are anxiously awaiting the results, like we are, of this vote. Among them are Leela Aheer, Todd Loewen, Rebecca Schulz, and Rajan Sawhney. And the 3 perceived frontrunners, Brian Jean, Danielle Smith, and Travis Toews. All right, let's begin our coverage, team coverage now with Tom Vernon, who is at the BMO Centre in Calgary. You'll be there all night for us as long as we need you. We might need him for a while, but Tom, are we still expecting those results to come in any minute? Last you told us it was around 7:30.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not here all night long. Hopefully we get this out pretty quickly. But just a few minutes ago, the 5-minute warning went out for people to take their seats, so we expect to see some action pretty quickly here. It was a long day of counting ballots. There was in-person voting. We're told that it wasn't a huge crush of voters coming in there, so they were able to count those ones pretty quickly. But it was the 80,000 mail-in ballots that took a little bit longer to count than they were expecting. So the results weren't released at 6. It was at 7:30. I'm joined tonight by public affairs commentator Jason Ribeiro. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It was a different summer than I think many were expecting when it came to this campaign. What do you make of the campaign that we've had?
It's been a grind. It's been exhausting. I think having a leadership review immediately track into a leadership election and race has been exhausting for folks within the party, for the candidates, but also for the average person who's seeing the bits and pieces through the news. And I think it's also been exacerbated by the fact that these issues haven't really been the issues that are on everyday Albertans' minds, at least as the polling tells us.
Yeah, the issues really talked about through this campaign has been the sovereignty issues and that, but not a lot about affordability. We have heard that. What about the Danielle Smith factor? I was amazed at the number of memberships that have been brought into the party in this campaign, considering there's a big membership drive for the leadership review as well. How has Danielle Smith impacted this campaign, do you think?
Hugely. I think she's run a very smart and effective playbook. People can, I think, snip at the edges about whether it's their cup of tea or their politics or whether they feel she's the right person to unite the UCP caucus, but she's carried herself as the front runner. She's raised a ton of money, she's brought attention to the party, she's dominated the media coverage, and she's forced all of the other candidates to play on their back foot, to respond to the merits or lack of merits of the Sovereignty Act. And I think that has had an undoubted shape in this race. And you saw that even recently, a couple days ago, where she held a press conference almost like the premier-designate.
Yeah, and it was interesting in that where she was reaching out with all of the branches as well. I have a lot of respect for the fellow candidates. We could see some of them in my cabinet in that. Look, this has been a divisive time, not just this leadership campaign, but leading up to it. Whoever wins tonight, how do they bring this party back together? What's the work that needs to happen?
It's a gargantuan task, right? And I think for the candidates, all 7 of them tonight, you really got to want this if you're going to do that. Otherwise, I think you may be just auditioning for a cabinet post. But for the front runners or the perceived front runners, I think they need to start by doing that in the room. Their speech is going to carry, I think, throughout not just this riding in Calgary, but across the province. And it's also going to be speaking to Albertans at home who are not party members, who are just turning on the news after putting the kids to bed. What are they going to get from it? Because it's not just the UCP that needs to unite. I think it is the province, and we're feeling, some really heady challenges, but we're also hearing some great opportunities, a flurry of announcements, I think majority of which are positively received by Albertans. That's going to be the mantle of responsibility that the next premier assumes.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting night. I've been talking to a couple of the campaigns, obviously a lot of confidence in those campaigns. We'll start to see the results coming up here shortly. A little bit on the process of that front. It is a ranked ballot, so when we see the first ballot, if no candidate gets 50% of the vote, the bottom one will drop off. Those votes will be redistributed, and it will happen until we get a candidate with 50% plus one. The way that works, they'll come up on stage, they'll read the results. There's actually a golf cart. They'll get off stage, drive the golf cart to the room with the ballots, and they'll drive back out and they'll read out the results again. So it's going to be an interesting night. We'll see how long this goes.
So, Tom, the golf cart might speed things up a bit, but give us a better sense, and for the viewers at home as well, on the timing on this. So we're going to get a first ballot result, hopefully, here shortly. How long do you think between the first and the second? What are you hearing on the floor?
I mean, and I guess it'll depend on maybe how disputed it is, maybe how the campaigns are going to want to look at how these are going. But my understanding is it'll take just as long as it takes for them to get off that stage, hop on that golf cart and drive. The room's just over there. You got to drive all the way to the other end. There's a locked door they'll go through. They handed envelope number 2 and they come back. So we were told initially every 10 minutes or so. I was told they'd like to do it a little faster than that. So we'll see. These things, I mean, it's already been delayed an hour and a half. These things have a way of going a little bit longer than we always expect. So we'll see.
All
That's
right.
the best I can say.
Tom Vernon on the floor for us in Calgary. Thanks very much, Tom.
All right, well, since we have the time, let's take a look at those 3 perceived frontrunners, starting with Danielle Smith, who dominated this leadership race. Her priorities include introducing the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which has been her flagship policy. She also wants to make changes in healthcare by using healthcare spending accounts for Albertans. And of course, she would want to reform the Human Rights Act.
And then we have Travis Toews here, who resigned as finance minister to run for leader. He secured the most endorsements from caucus, more than 24, in fact. His priorities are strengthening Alberta, making life more affordable, and improving our healthcare system.
And there's also Brian Jean, former Wildrose leader, of course, who re-entered politics in March after winning a by-election for Fort McMurray-Lac La Biche. His top priorities include constitutional negotiations with Ottawa. And he did say that he plans to stay on as MLA if he doesn't win tonight. Another priority, revitalizing rural healthcare and rural hospitals. All right, let's bring in our Adam McVicker into the fold now. He is also in the middle of the action tonight.
So, Adam, set the stage for us there, and how southern Alberta voters are expected to swing tonight.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have the perfect person to speak to about this. I'm joined by Michael Solberg, partner at New West Public Affairs. And Michael, let's talk about that Southern Alberta factor. Let's talk about how that plays into things.
Sure. I mean, if there's a beating heart of conservatism in this province, it's Southern Alberta. There's an enormous amount of memberships there, and they have the ability to totally affect this race.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry about this. We have to throw to the podium. Things are kicking off, and so we'll go to the podium.
You bet.
Before we commence the program, I would ask you to please rise for the singing of our national anthem. Please welcome Elizabeth Lewis, who will lead the singing of O Canada.
Do a little bit of a desk hunt, so all you guys need to do, you know the song, if you're singing along, just hold your line. Oh, Canada, oh, my native land, through patriot love, in us command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true
Please be seated. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's an exciting night to be together. The United Conservative Party is a coalition built on a strong set of principles: support for a robust civil society, free speech, economic freedom, limited government, fiscal responsibility, protecting public safety, and supporting the family. Support for these principles and the hard work of our leader and our team led to our overwhelming election victory in 2019. Over 1 million Albertans supported a platform that laid out exactly what we would do. And the UCP government has now completed nearly 95% of those campaign promises. As a result, we live in a province with the fastest growing economy in this country, with all of its advantages. Our leader, Jason Kenney, has put his heart and soul into enhancing the livelihoods of Albertans. We intend to do a more fulsome tribute to him at our upcoming annual general meeting in Edmonton, but tonight, on behalf of the UCP Board of Directors and all of our members, I want to thank him for his service. We are better for his enormous commitment and wish him success in the future. It's an extremely exciting time for our party. The leadership candidates have helped grow our membership to historical levels. They met tens of thousands of members at events, forums, and our 2 official debates. They have traveled from Lethbridge to Medicine Hat, Calgary to Lacombe, Edmonton to Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray, and everywhere in between, speaking with Albertans on issues that matter to them. This leaves our party in a great position to take on the NDP in the upcoming provincial election. While our economy is booming with the largest in-migration in our history, we know that not everyone is benefiting equally. The challenges we face are well known. The discussions have been robust. Congratulations to our leadership candidates. Leela Aheer, Brian Jean, Todd Loewen, Rajan Sawhney, Rebecca Schulz, Danielle Smith, and Travis Toews for their thoughtful and caring discussions of our future. To the campaign teams, all of you here and at home, you worked hard, played by the rules, engaged in the process, scrutineered in the verification centre, and for the vote and count today. You joined hundreds of volunteers who risked serious paper cuts, spending hours checking IDs and making sure that every eligible vote could be counted. Thank you for your service. We are pleased to report that close to 85,000 of our eligible members have participated in electing our new leader, an incredible level of engagement. Tonight, you will hear from both our Leadership Election Committee Chair, David Price, and our returning officer, the Honourable Rick Orman, who we owe a deep sense of gratitude. This process was executed under their leadership. David was joined by a diverse group of experienced UCP members on the Leadership Election Committee. We are grateful for their hard work. The staff, under the direction of our Executive Director, Dustin Van Voot, continues to work in the best interests of our membership. We have one of the strongest political teams in Canada. we're not quite ready for the results, so before I bring up David and Rick, let's talk about the days ahead. We know why we are all here: to ensure the re-election of a united Conservative government so that this province continues to move forward and we don't lose all of the gains that have been made. That's right. Albertans want to see this government re-elected, but in order to earn their support, we need to be a disciplined party that Albertans can trust. We need to be united. I've been listening to you, and I know you want to be united in fighting the next election. Now, let me remind you that there are just under 250 days before that election. I ask each and every one of you to think about how you can contribute to a successful campaign in 2023. Whether you're a party volunteer or a candidate, whether your contribution can be big or small, every part of our team is needed. One more thing. Please join us at our annual general meeting at the River Cree Resort at Enoch in Edmonton later this month. We'll be doing important party business, including board elections, policy and governance, and election readiness training. And perhaps most importantly, our new leader will be giving an address to our membership. You won't want to miss it. It's a huge milestone. We're choosing the next leader of our party and the next premier of the province. To all of our leadership candidates here tonight, the message from our party and members is simple. We're behind you. We're united, and we'll do whatever you need to win the next election and keep Alberta on the right track. Thank you. I will now invite David Price, Chair of the Leadership Election Committee, to say a few words about the committee's work. David?
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia, and thank you all for coming here tonight. Dear friends, our Leadership Election Committee was called upon in May earlier this year to put in place the rules and procedures of our leadership contest. The membership of our committee included 12 individuals from across our province and from very diverse backgrounds, representing an excellent cross-section of our membership. I'd also like to note that every member on our committee served as a volunteer. Every single member of our committee dedicated hundreds of hours to our task, sacrificing time with their families and taking time away from their jobs and other commitments to serve. Now, these are some of the finest people that I have had the pleasure of working with in my professional career, and I could not be more proud of the work of our committee. Thank you. Together, our committee delivered robust rules for a fair, open, secure, and transparent leadership election. We did not promise we'd be running on time, though. But our overriding ethos during this whole process has been that of integrity, accountability, and fair play. Our every decision has been governed by one simple question: how do we do right by our members, by you? Our balloting process flexibly provided for both mail-in and in-person voting. The verification of ballots, the counting of ballots, and the calculation of results today has taken place under the supervision of our returning officer, our neutral returning officer, Rick Orman, and his team of deputy returning officers and an army of volunteers. In addition, all campaigns have been consulted throughout this process and have been invited to have their volunteer scrutineers observe both the verification and counting processes. Of course, I want to thank the candidates and their teams for all their hard work. Each candidate and all their volunteers should be proud of the energetic campaigns they've run, the vigorous ideas and platforms that they've put forward, and their significant efforts to recruit tens of thousands of new members to our party. Most importantly, though, I want to thank all the candidates for standing behind our process and respecting our rules. In addition, I want to thank the party staff and all of our volunteers who helped get us to this point this evening. It's been hard work, and they have not only processed all those new memberships, but they've ensured that we got over 120,000 ballots to our members in plenty of time to get them mailed back and counted. And all said, we had approximately 85,000 ballots cast in this election. That is a huge turnout, folks. And we could not have had a smoother process, and we are very grateful to the hard work and the dedication of our staff and volunteers. And finally, I do want to thank the party board, especially Cynthia, for their resolute support of our committee and the trust that they placed in us to independently shepherd this process. It has been an absolute pleasure to have participated in this endeavor as we close out this long process tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of the dedicated members of the Leadership Election Committee for doing such a great job. Okay, we are very close to getting the results. We'll take a quick break before being joined by the returning officer, Rick Orman, and the auditor from Crowe McKay. 5-10 minutes, and we'll be back.
All right, you just heard from Cynthia Moore. She is the UCP board president. You also heard there from David Price, and we are waiting for the very important gentleman to come up and give us our first ballot results. That would be Rick Orman, who is the chief returning officer.
All right, so as we know, if no one gets a majority, so that's more than 50% in the first ballot, the candidate with the least preferred votes will be removed, and then the second, third, fourth choices are then rolled into the other candidates' counts.
All right, let's go back to Tom Vernon, who is on the floor and was just listening live to those speeches. We were hoping we were going to get Rick Orman right away. That did not happen, but he's going to be there very soon to give us our first ballot result. First, Tom, what did you make of the turnout? 85,000 members voted.
Yeah, and that's about what we were expecting, actually. Today, when I was speaking to one of the party staff members, they said, yeah, we got a few thousand people vote in person today, so that math adds up. They had about 80,000 mail-in ballots. What's really interesting is, look, that's a lot of ballots, a lot of engagement. 85,000 out of 124,000. That's just over 2/3 of the party membership who voted. So it'll be interesting after the fact, the candidates who do not win, what they might say about not being able to get that other 40,000 vote count in. But I mean, 85,000 votes in a leadership campaign, that's pretty interesting. It was really interesting as they were announcing who the candidates were. You know, Leela Aheer, Rebecca Schulz, Todd Loewen, they all got nice applause. Danielle Smith, she got a very large roar of support. And then Travis Toews, when his name was announced, it was a big roar as well. Probably not as big as Danielle Smith. So take that for what it's worth here in the room. Now, you could sense, people are hoping, let's get these results going in here. It's a pretty big crowd. They have filed in, and we'll find out how fast that golf court drives. They are driving it to the back. We'll see how long it takes them to drive it back out here, and we hear from Rick Orman about exactly who gets what vote on this first ballot.
Thanks very much, Tom Vernon, who is live for us at the BMO Centre. All right, we're going to break away from the BMO Centre for just a few minutes, and we're going to check in with Dwayne Bratt from Mount Royal University. And
Dwayne, a little earlier, Jason Ribeiro called this campaign race an odd one. How would you describe it?
I mean, the race itself was fairly short. I mean, it started in late May. It just seems really long because of the fight over the leadership review of Jason Kenney and pretty much infighting within the UCP since 2020. So it's been a very long race. And the issues, sovereignty and relitigating COVID, I don't think are at top of mind of most Albertans.
Dwayne, I want to ask you, what are you looking for on this first ballot when it comes to numbers? How will that shape the story for you?
I think it really depends on where the first place person is. And almost all the camps, including Toews and Jean, are saying Smith will lead on the first ballot. The question is, what's her number? If it's 45 or higher, I think she's got it. If it's below 45 but in the low 40s, then we'll see what happens as we go through multiple ballots. If it's below 40, watch for someone to pass her as we progress through. So that's kind of what I'm looking for on ballot number 1. Also, who is 7th and who drops off. That will also give us an indication of how quickly this may go tonight.
Well, if predictions are correct and Danielle Smith wins tonight, what does Alberta look like under her leadership when we wake up tomorrow?
Not so much tomorrow, but once she is sworn in, she has promised some real dramatic changes. Firing the Board of Alberta Health Services, firing many senior civil servants that she believes have NDP sympathies, launching her Sovereignty Act, which many experts, including myself, believe is unconstitutional, talking about giving Ottawa notice that we'll be pulling out of the RCMP agreement, thus paving a way for an Alberta Provincial Police Force, as well as creating a separate Alberta tax collection agency. So this would be very dramatic changes in a very rapid, short period of time. I also expect, if Smith wins, a much different cabinet. There's usually a cabinet shuffle after a leadership change. That makes sense. But there's a lot of backbenchers who supported her in the leadership race that I would expect to be elevated into cabinet, and other senior ministers who opposed her who may be removed. And it's even possible, as Jim Prentice did, that she may bring in other people who don't currently have a seat into her cabinet.
All right, Dwayne Bratt, plenty of possibilities as we continue to wait for those first ballot results. Thanks very much for that. We're going to go to Adam McVicker now, who has a guest with him. Adam.
Yes, absolutely, guys. I'm joined here by Jeff Davison, former Calgary City Councillor, and who moderated the 2 official party debates in this leadership race. Jeff, thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts so far on this race, based on your experience of trying to reel in the candidates in some of these debates?
You know, it's been an interesting race. I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. I mean, but you heard the crowd here tonight. I think a lot of people are here in support of Travis, a lot of people supporting Danielle, and I think they've really been the front runners here in this election.
What was the temperature maybe in the room during those debates? You know, you got supporters behind you, and you actually had to, you know, kind of calm some people down behind you. There's a lot of reactions in the crowd. So what was the temperature like at those debates?
You know, I think respectful overall. You know, I think the important thing to remember is that whoever comes out as the leader today, not only will they be premier, they'll be tasked with really unifying the party and moving it forward. So I think the temperature at the debates really reflected that. I think the candidates were very respectful of one another. They talked about the issues that were important to Albertans. And, you know, I think that is the one thing that I would say has lasted, is that one way or another, we have to move forward together.
And I guess, what's your expectation after tonight? What do you see, how do you see this party moving forward? Of course, we have that spring election date in mind, just on the horizon there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first order of business is really working with caucus to say, you know, how are we going to do this? And really thinking about who is the team that's going to be put into those ministries that will sort of give Albertans the confidence going into the next election that this is the party to move forward with.
And so, we've been kind of asking for people what their expectations are tonight. So maybe for you, what's your expectation tonight?
You know, my expectation is honestly get behind whoever wins tonight. I think Albertans have had their say. There's a record amount of memberships that have been sold, and that indicates that whoever wins, we've got to move forward with them.
Fair enough. I really do appreciate the time, Jeff. Thanks so much for this. And guys, we're going to keep this going and bring you as much analysis as we can from the floor, and then hopefully some results very soon. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Adam. And now we're going to go to another corner of BMO Center right now.
Absolutely. Let's go back to Tom now. So, Tom, we are now 29 minutes after, well, actually 2 hours after the original
That's true.
Plan, which was 6 o'clock. So, but we're half an hour past 7:30 when we thought we were going to get these results. What are you hearing on the floor? Are we expecting them soon?
Yeah, we are expecting them soon. When Cynthia Moore was up there and came down, they said, yeah, we need another 10 minutes. So imminent? What did I say earlier? There's only 2 things that you can predict about Alberta politics, that it's wild and that leadership results are going to be late. We're joined again by public affairs commentator Jason Rivera. What did you make of the comments from the party president, obviously bringing the rift back together here in the party?
Yeah, unity is the theme, right? And I think they're taking the cues from the chattering class, but also from members, that unity matters. I would not discount the ability of Conservative parties in general of coalescing behind a leader when their opposition is very clear. And so even though this might just be rhetoric, I do expect that no matter who the premier is or the premier designate, that they will get behind the leader because it will be very real who their opposition is at this point.
What do you think the importance of the first ballot numbers will be as far as who the front runner is and what the level is and how this might play out?
Well, look, I think folks much smarter than you and I will be doing all the statistical modeling for the rest of the evening from there. But it does matter, right? Where that front runner starts has a huge, huge importance on the subsequent ballots that fall off. How quickly does that voting pool of ballots shrink? And who does that pose advantageous for? So that first ballot number is the most important number. If it's not 50 plus 1, here we go. We'll buckle up and we'll see what happens from there.
It's very interesting when they were announcing the different candidates and the cheers in the room. I'm not sure there was any surprise that the two biggest cheers were Danielle Smith and Travis Toews, but I mean Danielle Smith, it was a raucous roar.
Yeah, this is Danielle Smith's room. Yeah. It was very clear. I think we all sort of looked around and said, whoa, that was a bit of a pop. And so she's got the support, even the folks that may live in rural ridings, as she wants to represent a rural riding and lives in one herself, have made their way back down to Calgary. She obviously has a storied history with this city. So not totally surprising that she has a lot of local support here in the city, but also matched by Travis Toews, who I think is relying a lot on Jason Kenney's former network here in the city, which was actually quite strong, given his history in federal politics and Alberta politics as well.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting time. We're expecting results soon, right? They said 10 minutes from now, about 10 minutes ago, so it should be soon. Speaking with people inside campaigns, I spoke with Travis Toews' campaign co-chair earlier. He says, look, everywhere they traveled in the province, Travis Toews impressed people, and if he wasn't their number one on the ballot, he moved up their ballot, so they're obviously confident. We've heard from some scrutineers in the Todd Loewen campaign that he did really well today in central Alberta, so it'll be interesting to see how that impacts on all this. So it's a leadership race. It's a day of ballot counting and guessing on where all those votes are going to fall, so it is going to be a very, very interesting next little while here, and at the end of it, we'll know who the next premier is. So hopefully we'll start hearing those results soon.
All right, so Tom, you've covered a lot of these leadership campaigns, and the vote this time was different with the mail-in ballot, the fact it's all being done at once. Tell us how that might play into this tonight.
Yeah. So think back to the leadership race that Ed Stelmach won, right? They went through the first round of ballots, and we got to the final three, and then they were allowed to sell memberships again, right? So Ed Stelmach obviously went out and had a very successful membership selling push, and that's how it ended up working out with Jim Dinning, Ted Morton, and Ed Stelmach. And Ed Stelmach came right up the middle and won in that race. People have been asking me for weeks, so what's your prediction? Who do you think is going to win? I'm not predicting anything. Like, we've seen so many of these things go different ways, not just provincially, but federally, and federal conservative races as well, where there's the perceived front runner and a lot of candidates, and just how the ballots are ranked and how the math works out in the end. So I'm not making any predictions, but you heard the cheers in here, so we hear a top two when it comes to the cheers in here, but who knows how it's going to finish.
I remember covering Alison Redford's leadership win, and again, another big surprise for sure. All right, thanks very much, Tom.
All right, from Calgary to Edmonton we go. Our Sarah Reid is standing by. She's at a watch party at the Edmonton Inn, and that's where members of the UCP were voting this morning between 8 and 12. So let's check in with her now.
Yes, Carol-Ann, many of those people who voted today are back tonight hoping to see the results of the candidate that they're supporting maybe come out on top, but obviously we're still waiting for those results, and while we do, we are joined by John Zadek. You are a former Edmonton councillor, city councillor. You are also the UCP nominated candidate for Edmonton Castle Downs for the next election. I guess, what do you make of the support tonight, not only for yourself, but also for the UCP party?
Well, this is a great turnout. This is a sold-out event. This is the official watch party, but Castle Downs is hosting it. We have a lot of momentum in Castle Downs. We have people that helped organize this that are rooting for one candidate, and other people that are rooting for another and yet another. But we're going to keep that united in the United Conservative Party. And no matter what happens tonight, we're all excited. There might be some more cheers for some and more cheers for others. But regardless, what I'm going to do as the candidate, I'll be on the ballot in May of 2023, is be that strong Edmonton voice. And I'm going to do everything I can to convince the new leader of the UCP, which will be the new premier of the province of Alberta, that Edmonton is at the table, that Edmonton is important, and that we got unique issues here that need addressing.
You mentioned, a number of people in this room supporting a number of different candidates, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're all cheering for the same party here. What is your hope for what, the winning candidate will do and what they'll prioritize for the party?
Well, I hope all candidates that participate in leadership have a place in the new government if they choose to have that. I hope that the new leader reaches out and takes some of the best ideas from competing candidates, because it is a unique situation where you want to differentiate. Is this live? Yeah. Yourself from the other candidates, because you want to show what policy positions are important to you, but as a family, after this, let's go back and take the best of the best from all of the candidates. And I really expect that that's a characteristic of strong leadership. And I would expect that the new leader of the UCP to take the best so that we have the strongest policy going into the next provincial election. Perfect.
Yes. Well, we'll have to wait and see who that candidate is. And hopefully, they do have that strength to take the party forward. But based on the polling in this room, they do believe Danielle Smith is going to be the one who comes out on top. So we'll have to wait and see for those results.
And Sarah, before we let you go, I did want to ask you sort of what the vibe is there, and did you get the chance to talk to people? And it sounds like you did.
Yes, I did. I mean, people are definitely anxious, as many have been here for a couple hours now. Multiple trips to the bar, multiple trips to get some food, just waiting here. There's not too much discussion on who individuals are voting for. I think they are just excited to see which candidate actually does come out on top. And again, the discussion seems to be that people want the party reunited and to move forward as that united front. So whoever is the best candidate to do that, that seems to be who they're getting behind.
The bar is often the big winner on nights like this. I know that for sure. All right, thanks very much. Sarah Reid at the Edmonton Inn tonight.
All right, let's go to a live shot now of BMO Centre in Calgary. You can see here leadership candidate Danielle Smith chatting with fellow members as she also awaits for the first ballot results to come in.
And yes, once again, we're about almost 40 minutes behind schedule now as we continue to wait for that first ballot. Many of the leaders and MLAs are in that room tonight, doing the very same as we're doing.
And a little bit earlier, UCP board president Cynthia Moore, revealed that, or unveiled that 85,000 ballots were cast in this leadership vote. She called it a great turnout. She also drove home the point that unity is very important. The UCP, of course, is a party with two very different bases. It's still two parties within one, and I'm sure whoever wins tonight will face similar challenges that Jason Kenney did. So.
And there's a live shot. I believe that is Brian Jean there. And I want to talk to Tom Vernon because, Tom, does this give us any indication that this might be happening soon now that we have some of the leaders there in the room?
Yeah, they should all be in here right now because we were told 10 minutes that the results will be coming out. So, as I said last time, we should be getting them pretty quickly here. We saw a couple leadership candidates there. I'm joined by one now myself, Rebecca Schulz. Thank you so much for joining us here. How are you feeling right now after this? It was a fast campaign, but really kind of a long one, too.
Yeah, that's exactly it. In some ways it felt quick, in some ways it felt long, but you know what? It's an exciting time for us. As I travel the province, I do know that Albertans do want to see a Conservative government lead us through this time of economic growth. I do think after a difficult couple of years, what people are looking for is some hope and optimism, a plan and a vision for the future of our province. And, I think our campaign provided that.
What do you make? A lot of the talk on the stage there is about unity and bringing everybody back together, uniting behind one leader. Is that going to require work after this? It has been a tough couple years.
You know what? Unity always requires work when you are a big tent party, a coalition of various different ideas and perspectives on policy and positions. I actually think that's one of the things that makes our Conservative Party so strong. I think it gives us good policy, but we have to be able to have those differences of opinion, different perspectives on policy, and then still come together as a united front, especially if we want to win in the next election in May of 2023.
85,000 ballots. What do you make of that number?
You know what? I think that's exciting too. It showed that people wanted to have a say in the future of our party and the future of our province. I think also seeing 7 people put their names forward in this leadership race is a positive thing as well.
What were you hearing at the doorsteps? We saw some polling a little while ago that Albertans wanted to hear about affordability and healthcare and those issues. Is that what you were hearing? Was there much talk really about the sovereignty stuff at the door?
You know, it wasn't always positioned as sovereignty, but I did hear a lot about how do we get rid of Justin Trudeau? How do we make sure that the federal government or other provinces are not infringing on Alberta, on our provincial rights, our constitutional jurisdiction, or our economic growth and prosperity. So I did hear that a lot everywhere I went, not just in rural or in Calgary or in Edmonton, but right across the province. I did also hear about affordability, the cost of living, inflation, as well as required changes to the healthcare system, which we are not unique in as a province, but I think we've got a really great opportunity to make some changes here to better meet the needs of patients and Albertans.
I've covered enough of these ranked ballot votes that I'm not predicting anything. I never know what's going to happen, but you're inside it. Is there a path for you? Do you see a path to winning tonight?
You know what? We started out with a clear path to winning, but as I've said, you know, when there's 7 people on the ballot, you never really know what's going to happen. Whatever does happen tonight, I can tell you this. I am proud of our campaign. I am proud of our team. We put forward a vision of hope and optimism, a vision that would take Alberta forward and not back. And that was exciting for me. It's something I'm proud of. And hearing from Albertans these last 4 or 5 months has really truly been encouraging as we head into a provincial election in less than 8 months.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. That is Rebecca Schulz, leadership candidate for the United Conservative Party. She's waiting, just like the rest of us, for the first ballot to see where everybody stands and where we go from here. Scott,
all right.
Caroline?
Tom Vernon playing it safe. No predictions tonight. Smart man. He's a smart man. All right, let's go back live to the floor now. It is 8:11, and as you can see, it is starting to fill up. So even more people there, and hopefully that is an indication that we may get that first ballot result very soon.
All right, well, as we wait, let's check in again with Dwayne Bratt from Mount Royal University for more analysis on what's going on.
Dwayne, I had a question for you. Who do you think the NDP would like to win tonight? Do you think that the party has a preferred candidate here?
You know, on the one hand, I think they would like to see someone like a Danielle Smith win. But on the other, I think members of the NDP are very concerned about what she could do in the 6 or 7 months that she is premier. And so while that may benefit them in the general election, I think they want to be concerned about Alberta as a whole.
Dwayne, while we're talking about the other candidates, we know Danielle Smith dominated the headlines, but who else do you think ran a really good campaign?
You know, people run for leadership for different reasons. Sometimes they run to win. Sometimes they run to raise their profile in the party. And sometimes they raise to put issues on the table. So you look at someone like Leela Aheer, who is unlikely to win tonight, could very well finish 6th or 7th on the ballot. But I think she brought some important issues to the table, you know, about how we treat one another and about respect. And that, I think, as well as being a firm critic of, you know, the Sovereignty Act. So I thought Leela here ran a campaign based on a principle, on an issue, even if she likely is not going to win.
We just saw Rebecca Schulz speaking with our Tom Vernon. She had some really big endorsements from Rona Ambrose, former Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall. Why wasn't she one of the front runners?
Yeah, and that's a hard thing because I thought she was going to do much better as well. Not just the types of endorsements that she had, but she had a good message. You know, she helped to negotiate the child care agreement with the federal government, and she could tell people who were upset with Ottawa, hey, I actually showed that you can work with Ottawa and make a deal with Ottawa and be tough with Ottawa and get results instead of just throwing rocks and yelling. That message never resonated. And I think, you know, she's still got a big future in politics. She, I believe, is the youngest candidate out there. So when I talked about the 3 types of candidates, those who want to win, those who want to raise their profile, and those fighting on an issue or a principle, I think she's probably category number 2. And whoever wins would be well served to have a woman like Rebecca Schulz in her cabinet.
A candidate to watch in the future. Okay, always appreciate the insight. I'm sure we will talk to you in a little bit. Thank you, Dwayne.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, let's go back to the floor in Calgary, where Adam McVicker is standing by with Todd Loewen.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm standing here with Todd Loewen, of course, one of the candidates in this leadership race. As we're waiting here, Todd, how are you feeling?
Really good. I think it's great to see so many people here. It's good to see so many people turned out to vote. I think it's a great time for the party. We're going to look forward to a new leader tonight. Wake up tomorrow morning with a whole new vision ahead of us.
And what is that first role the leader will have to do in this room tonight as the party prepares for 2023?
I think it's time to set a vision forward for where the party's going and to rebuild the trust of Albertans. I think that'll be the most important thing this leader will do, is rebuild the trust of Albertans across the province and make sure that we have that trust to go into the next election in May 2023.
Across this campaign, what are some of the key issues that's been brought to you as you've been speaking with constituents and members across the province?
Healthcare, always a big concern. Concern with the economy and the cost of living, those increases, and our dealings with Ottawa. So those are some of the main three issues that came up no matter where I went. And so there's a lot of concerns on those, and those are all things we have to deal with.
Of course, we're still waiting for that first ballot result, but how confident are you in whoever the next leader is going to be in being able to unite the party? Of course, knowing that that the party has to face the NDP coming up in the next election.
I think it'll be good. I think once people realize we have a new leader, they'll get behind that leader and move forward. I know caucus will. Even the leadership candidates that are running, they've all said that they want to join behind whoever wins, and we need to work together going forward. And I think it'll happen. I think it's a process. The leadership race itself can be a little contentious, but I think moving forward, I think we'll be together and we'll be able to be in good shape for May 2023.
I guess how necessary did you think this kind of we're actually going to go back to the podium right now.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, thank you.
But we have some formalities. So before the results, I would like to invite Sam Kaketsis, Managing Director of Crowe McKay LLP, and auditor for this process, to say a few words. And I want to thank Sam. They spent hundreds and hundreds of hours both in the verification centre and during the count today.
Thank you, everybody. Our firm, Crowe McKay LLP, was engaged by the UCP to oversee and conduct various agreed-upon procedures over the duration of this UCP leadership race and election day itself. To begin with, I would like to confirm that our team was independent at the start of the engagement and has remained independent throughout the process. The end goal was for us to validate the election process and the tabulation of the election results, based on the agreed-upon procedures that we performed. To that end, the procedures we performed covered custody and security of the mail-in ballots, the verification process of the ballots, the in-person voting process, and finally the process over the security, integrity, and logic of the tabulation software providing the election results. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, and to the entire team at Crowe McKay for your support and professionalism. Now, I would like to invite our Chief Returning Officer, Rick Orman, to explain the voting process.
All right, as you just heard Cynthia Moore say, they are hopefully getting Rick Orman to the stage. And as we understand, he is heading up to the podium. Let's listen in.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rick Orman, and I'm the Chief Returning Officer. And our job is to oversee the leadership election and ensure compliance with all the rules and all the procedures. I was assisted in this task by 3 exceptional Deputy Returning Officers, Doug Caswell, Ken Bradley, and from Edmonton, Annie Travoy. And by 5 excellent in-person DROs, those that were in the remote sites, Ian Brody, Linda Lowe, Stephen Butt, Gail Langford, and Don Hubble. And we were supported by over 250 party volunteers who dedicated countless hours in helping with our verification process for the mail-in ballot and as poll clerks at our 5 polling locations. I'd like to thank all of these volunteers for their hard work and their loyalty to their party. And let me tell you, if anybody thinks this party is in trouble, they ought to come and talk to me, because I saw 2,000 hours of volunteer time to make this process work. The bylaws of the United Conservative Party require that a leadership election be conducted via a one-member, one-vote system. Unlike the federal party, we do not have a riding-by-riding weighted system. In Alberta, one membership means one vote, no matter where you live. To be named leader, a candidate must win a majority of the valid votes cast. If after the first round no candidate receives a majority, then the lowest placed candidate will be dropped from the race, and we will relocate their ballots based on their second choices and add them to the totals. This process is repeated until a candidate receives a majority, 50% plus one vote. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived. We have the results for the first ballot. No candidate has received a majority of the valid votes cast, so we will go to another ballot. Leela Aheer has dropped off from the race, and the next choice on those ballots will be redistributed to the other candidates. We had 84,593 ballots cast. And I will read to you the percentage received by each candidate. Leela Aheer, 1.65%. Brian Jean, 10.99%. Todd Loewen, 7.68%. Rajan Sawhney, 2.11%. Rebecca Schulz, 6.9%. Danielle Smith, 41.31%. Travis Toews, 29.35%. So those are the results of the first ballot, and I'll be back in 5 minutes with the redistributed numbers. Thank you.
Okay, so as you just heard from the Chief Returning Officer, here are the numbers once again. Danielle Smith, way out front, 41.31%, followed by Travis Toews at 29.35%.
All right, so no one getting a majority, so we're going to have to go to a second ballot. And do you want to continue reading those, results?
Yeah, we're going to need more than that, I suspect, because Leela here drops off with just 1.65% of the vote. Let's go to Tom Vernon now. Tom, what's your take on that first ballot?
Yeah, so that's it's really interesting. We're going to ask Jason about this, because that 41.31%, that's kind of on the cusp of something. I just want to get to that in a second here. But as you mentioned, Travis Toews second at 29.35%. Brian Jean at 10.9%. That's probably a lot lower than he was hoping. Now, Leela here, 1.65%. She's going to fall off the ballot. We're obviously going to need more than 2 ballots. That's not going to be enough to get up to the 50%. But let's start with Danielle Smith, 41%. What's the significance of that number?
It's on the cusp. I'm trying to find the words here because it sounds good when you look at the numbers across the board, but it's how that roll-up occurs and who's going to fall off on that ballot and benefit Danielle Smith. When you're into that 43, 44, 45, your ballots can drop off, but you'll at least shift votes upward. In this case, 41, 42, as ballots drop off, if you're not named on those ballots and the people only name each other for the 5, 6, and 7 slot, you don't get the roll-up of that, and the denominator shifts. And who benefits? Maybe Travis Toews. Brian Jean, I think, had a very low showing, as you alluded to right there, but 41, 42% is on the cusp for Danielle, not, I think, what she wanted to see, at least on the first ballot.
The number that's really interesting to me is Todd Loewen at 7.68%. Because, I mean, he was speaking a lot of the same themes as Danielle Smith. You could tell throughout the campaign she was kind of leaning towards his vote. So that Todd Loewen at 7.6% might be an interesting factor in that in those ballots to come. So we're going to be hearing the next round of ballots, and they said about 5 minutes time. So we will see. We're going to get at least 3, it looks like. Back to you guys.
We'll take the 5 minutes with a grain of salt there, but we certainly hope so. We could be in for a very long night given those first ballot results.
Let's see what Dwayne Bratt from Mount Royal University thinks about all this. We're hearing that he has a lot to say. Hi, Dwayne.
Hey, so I said this morning, or it seems like this morning, but when I was doing the supper hour here in Calgary, I said if Smith was over 45 on the first ballot, she's got it. If she's below 40, I don't think she could win. If she's in the low 40s, we could be here a long time. So I think we're going to the 5th or 6th ballot here because Leela Aheer's 1%, that's going to lead into Rajan Sawhney's 2%. Rebecca Schulz's 6%. Even when we get to Todd Loewen, and a lot of Loewen supporters support Smith, you combine those two, you're still at 48, right? And that's assuming 100% move to her. So I think what it could very well come down to is when Brian Jean drops off. And when Brian Jean drops off, where do his supporters go? Do they go to Smith? Do they go to Toews? If they're evenly split, Smith wins. If they're overwhelmingly to Toews, then Toews wins. But if somehow some of Aheer, Schulz's, and Sawhney supporters support Smith, and I don't think there's many that do, maybe Todd Loewen supporters might push her over.
So, Dwayne, you see a potential path to victory here for Travis Toews. How do you think he reacted to that number?
He should be happy at 29, and he should be very happy at Smith at 41, right? Because I have a feeling that Aheer, Schulz, and Sawhney's people will support Toews. And so I think by the time we get to the 4th ballot, that gap could be 42-34, 42-35. And then it's the question of Loewen, but it's really going to come down to, I think, Brian Jean and Brian Jean supporters.
All right, now let's say Travis Toews, wins this in the end. How does he chart a new course because he was so closely tied to Jason Kenney? So what does that look like?
I think he charts a course that echoes many of the policies, especially the economic policies that he was in charge of as the Kenney government. And we're in pretty good economic times now without the drama, with better caucus relations, with better connections to the rural caucus. So it would basically be, a less charismatic, less top-down approach, but many of the same policies, and in the absence of COVID. I think that's what Toews would be looking for, is, dare I say it, boring politics is what Travis Toews would want.
All right, thanks very much, Dwayne Bratt. Very interesting start to the night. Well, start to the night. It's 8:30, but
It could just be the start. I mean, it sounds, according to Dwayne, that we could be in for a long night.
Absolutely. So let's refresh your memory here on the first ballot results, as you can see right there. And boy, as we've heard from a few people tonight, from Tom and Jason and Dwayne, on the cusp is how they are describing that 41.3% on the first ballot for Danielle Danielle Smith.
And then we have Travis Toews with 29.4%, followed by Brian Jean, who came in with 11% of the vote on the first ballot.
A bit of a surprise, maybe. Todd Loewen, 7.7%. A very good showing for him. And then we have Rebecca Schulz, 6.9%.
And Rajan Sawhney has 2.1% of the vote. And then Leela Aheer has now dropped off, getting the lowest support at 1.6%.
All right, we are going to go back to Adam McVicker, who again is on the floor. Adam, what was the reaction from the crowd there?
Well, I mean, after people heard that we are going to, nobody got that crucial 50%. A lot of groans, a lot of excitement. You know, people have been waiting here for a couple hours now for this. So a lot of mixed reaction in the room too, of course. And to help me break it all down, I'm joined by Mandy Johnson with Crestview Strategy. Thanks so much for taking a moment to chat with us here. It didn't happen on the first ballot. So what does this mean?
I think we're going to see it go. It's going to be a long night. It's going to be a long night for us here at BMO Centre. We aren't going to get it done on the next round of ballots or the one after. It's going to go to 5 or 6 at this point. So I guess buckle up.
An extra cup of coffee might be needed. So when you take a look at those numbers, who's playing spoiler here? What is your expectation for how this then starts to play out?
I think Danielle's still got a 10-point lead. It's going to be hard to catch up, but it's not impossible. I think Todd Loewen's seconds can get it done, and if it doesn't, then we're going right down to the end.
Right down to the end. What were you expecting, I guess, ahead of this first ballot announcement? What was your maybe prediction, and how did it play out differently?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of thought Danielle could pull this off on a first ballot. We obviously didn't see that. And now I think it was always either going to go first ballot or right down to the wire here. So that's what we're seeing, and I think people can expect it to go either way now.
So, as we just heard, maybe an extra cup of coffee. We're going to be here for a little while, guys. Back to you in the studio.
I should have brewed a pot. I didn't, unfortunately.
No, we weren't.
We could be here for a while. And you just heard from Mandy Johnson saying she thinks it might go 5, 6 ballots. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Never a dull moment in Alberta politics. We've heard that before, right?
And since we have some time, why don't we do a little panel with Jason Ribeiro and bring in Dwayne Bratt once again. Thank you for being with us. It's kind of an exciting, what could be a long night, I guess. First of all, while we wait, I wanted to ask you guys, where's Kenney tonight? Jason, Dwayne, do you have any idea where he is tonight?
I have no idea.
I think Dwayne has a better sense than us.
Has there been no blue truck?
Yeah, well, I was wondering because, you know, today being his last full day in the top job, and we saw him working till the very last minute. And he did say he will.
Typically, there's tributes to the outgoing leader at things like that.
Sorry, guys, I have to interrupt. Somebody's at the podium.
Our supporters. If anybody knows the task of running in a leadership, and I know the commitment and the time and the hard work that goes into it, those people are very important to our party. And even though we will be dropping one candidate off at a time, we cannot forget the contribution that they've made to this process. The 124,000 memberships that we have in our party is to a large extent because of the hard work of the candidates and the people that supported them. I now have the results for the second ballot. No candidate has received a majority of valid votes cast, so we will go to another ballot. Rajan Sawhney will drop off with 2.66%. Thank you, Rajan, for your hard work. Brian Jean, 11.25%. Todd Loewen, 7.71%. Rebecca Schulz, 7.32%. Danielle Smith, 41.41%. Travis Toews, 29.66%. So I will go back, we'll redistribute the second choice ballots of Rajan Sawhney's, and we will then be back with those results.
All right, we just got the latest results. As we knew from ballot 1, this was not going to change things very dramatically, given the low percentage that was won by Leela Aheer. And as we just heard, Rajan Sawhney will also drop off this ballot. Really, very little change at the top. 41.31% to 41.41% for Danielle Smith. Virtually no change for Travis Toews either, 29.35 to 29.66. So we are going to need a few more ballots, certainly, before we are able to declare a winner tonight.
All right, let's bring in our Tom Vernon for a reaction on this latest ballot. Tom.
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, we weren't going to see a big shift in that. There was only 1.65% of the ballot to go on that one. And Rajan Sawhney, she's 2.66%. So we're not going to see another big jump in this next ballot, but it could start to get interesting. When do you think we're going to start seeing kind of the movement? We've got, who's next here? It'd be Rebecca Schulz at 7.32%. Are we going to start seeing maybe how the night plays out there, or is it going to be later than that?
Yeah, I think it might be later. And it's just because those three candidates that we just mentioned are all, I think, pulling from the same base of support. There's not enough to differentiate them on policy. There's not enough to differentiate them even regionally from where they're from. So I think that's going to be a challenge in terms of impacting the rest of the race, where Danielle Smith, Brian Jean, Travis Toews, huge historic sort of rural supports. I don't know that this is going to be the difference maker, but you'll never know. You sometimes get interesting combinations on ballots this late in the race.
Looking at these results, is this about where you were expecting it to be early on in the race, the bottom three, bottom four?
Yes, but it's the numbers that are interesting. You know, a Brian Jean, probably a softer performance than he would have wanted on that first ballot. A Travis Toews, pretty confident overperformance that I think most were having. And again, you see how different and separated the narratives are about campaigns from the actual boots on the ground, selling of memberships and turning out people to vote. I think this is an example of that, where Brian Jean, very vocal, but not showing up on the leaderboard here. Travis Toews, a little bit more reserved, big caucus support, showing up here today on the leaderboard as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever covered a campaign where you talk to someone and they go, nah, we're not that confident, right? It's about showing confidence heading into the election night. So that was about 5 minutes, right? Maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes. So he's driving his golf cart to the back. He's getting the next round of results. So drive it back, and hopefully we'll find out the next round in a couple minutes here.
We're going to have to get a shot of that golf cart. I haven't seen it yet. But
we do. We really do, yeah.
We'll get our photographer on that. I want to see that golf cart before the end of the night. All right, thanks very much, Tom.
All right, let's go to Adam McVicker now, who is standing by with Leela Aheer.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm joined here by Leela Aheer. Of course, obviously not the result you were hoping for this evening after that first ballot. How are you feeling right now after the first results came in?
Well, I would be lying if I wasn't disappointed. We did definitely expect the numbers to be higher, but at the same time, I just feel so privileged to have been part of all of this. It's been a beautiful opportunity to engage with Albertans. We've brought a very different tone, and I think elevated what it is that people expect from the Conservative movement, but particularly going into the next election. And that level of engagement is always wonderful, and I actually love campaigning. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but talking to folks and having eyeball-to-eyeball conversations is very humbling, and I'm super proud of the work that our team did. It was a little team, just our family.
And so I guess, what do you expect as we start to get through the rest of tonight's ballots? What are your expectations for the rest of the night, and who do you think might be the next leader?
You know, it's anybody's game at this point in time. We're already going into the third ballot, so we'll see what happens. But again, I think at the end of the day, Albertans win by going through something like this, and then we'll see what happens. It's like anything. You come in with a platform, you get people excited and organized around what you want, but at the end of the day, it's about Albertans. So now, depending on what ends up happening now we go back to Albertans and we consult with them and we find out what they want from us.
That was going to lead into my next question. What is next under whoever the next leader is going to be? What's going to be the next step in this process?
I have no idea. Well, we have caucus tomorrow morning, as I understand it. So I imagine that will be quite the thing. We'll see who ends up coming out as the winner of this. But again, the biggest winner out of all of these sorts of things has to be Albertans.
And I guess my last question: how confident are you in maybe your competitors in this race to be able to unite the party if one of them obviously comes out the victor tonight?
I think as long as they unite us, right? All 7 of us who've run in this campaign have come at it from fairly different perspectives and have a lot, I think, to offer whoever the next leader is. And I think as long as that person leads collaboratively, because that's when you fail, is when it's that top-down piece, right? That's why we're here in the first place. So I think that if we've learned that, and if my seven, all of us together, everybody who's sacrificed so much to go into this race, and if we can bring us all together, I think it's a very good view of what Alberta looks like. And so if we can bring all of those folks together, I think we'll have some very good voices at the table.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Leela Aheer. And yes, sorry it didn't work out the way you were hoping for, but thank you so much for taking a quick moment here with us. And so we'll throw it back to you guys in studio as now we await the results for the next upcoming ballot.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And as we just saw there, Leela here was the first to drop off in the first ballot. And I want to bring in Jason and Dwayne once again. We were interrupted earlier. Just wanted to get your thoughts. First, we can start with you, Jason. Thoughts on how the night is unfolding so far?
It's interesting. You're seeing the distance, I mentioned this earlier, between campaign narratives and promoters and cheerleaders versus the actual on-the-ground results. I think it was always going to be a question for me what that first ballot number was for Danielle Smith. And I think, like Dwayne said earlier, we scenario planned. If it's above, it's below, if it's right there. Everything else, I think, down ballot that happened is happening as we expected. It's really this middle chunk that's going to be very interesting.
And Dwayne, you mentioned that Travis Toews should be happy with how things are going so far.
Yes, indeed. I think 29 is probably higher than he expected. And to be able to keep Smith at 41 is also there. And Brian Jean's got to be very disappointed at 10. I think he expected much higher.
Sorry, Dwayne, we have to interrupt. We got to go back to the podium.
Todd Loewen has dropped off from the race, and the next choices on those ballots will be redistributed to the other candidates. Brian Jean, 12.07%. Rebecca Schulz, 8.02%. Danielle Smith, 41.70%. Todd Loewen, 30.41%. And Todd Loewen had 7.81%. So we will be back.
All right, that was an interesting result. I want to bring in Tom Vernon, if we can, right now, because I think some people...
Was Toews dropped off the ballot? Did I say that Todd Loewen dropped off? So let me do this again. I thought I did it right. Brian Jean has 12.07%. Todd Loewen has 7.81%. Rebecca Schulz, 8.02%. Danielle Smith, 41.70%. And Travis Toews, 30.41%. Sorry if there's any heart conditions out there.
Okay, that makes a little more sense because
we were both looking at each other.
I was just about to throw to Tom Vernon and say, boy, we certainly would have suspected that some of Loewen's votes may have likely gone to Danielle Smith. And so we got things corrected there. Tom, your reaction to what you just heard.
Yeah, so threw us for a bit of a loop, but we got it straight now. So Todd Loewen's ballots will be counted in the next go-around, so we will hear that in the next one. So it's interesting to see, like Rebecca Schulz passed Todd Loewen at that point, right? So she'll be the next one off, it looks like, unless she gets a big surge from the lone vote. Let's bring in Jason Ribeiro here. Okay, starting to get interesting here. Rebecca Schulz, her vote went up, but she will be, after Todd Loewen, the next one off. That's 7.81%. How important is that number at this stage, do you think?
Critical.
Yeah.
And not just because of the number, but for who he is and who he's aligned himself with from his time as an MLA, even when he was within caucus, et cetera. You see how he's tipped his hand towards the issues that represent a position of Brian Jean, represent a position of Danielle Smith. And so it's where that breakdown in the numbers actually goes. It's going to be very interesting. The number is robust, so we'll see how evenly split it goes. But it is interesting to me that it's lasted this long to see where those numbers actually are going to go.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at the screen here. We do see that. I'm going to do a little bit of quick math once we're wrapped up here, because are we starting to see ballots fall off the list then? Because we might see a shrinking pool in the role that would play.
Exactly, and so the bottom number, the denominator, is actually going to shrink of available votes that you can have, and that's why I mentioned earlier that number of 41 point something is a little soft for the kind of roll-up that you really need and the kind of surprises that we've seen in Alberta politics and leadership elections in campaigns prior.
Yeah, so, I mean, interesting times here. We're going to go to what will that be? That'll be our fourth ballot. Todd Loewen will be the next one off. His 7.81% will roll to some candidates. It'll be really interesting to see where exactly that vote goes and how this shapes up for the next one.
Well, they made us wait, Tom, but I think it's worth it. This is getting very exciting, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Let's go to Adam McVicker now, who's standing by with Rajan Sawhney. Obviously a disappointing night for her, Adam.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yes, I'm joined here by Rajan Sawhney. Made it to the second ballot. I guess maybe first, how are you feeling after seeing the result?
Well, I feel great. We had set out to make strides in creating a bigger tent, and I think I've done that. And I wasn't very well known at the outset of this race, so I feel very good. We have a lot to be proud of, and I'm very grateful to my team.
What are your expectations now that we're going to a fourth ballot? What are your expectations as this continues to play out?
Well, my expectations are that once this is over and the leader is selected, that we'll all come together as one big family and we'll support the leader. I've always said that at the outset, even though it was a very punchy, adversarial, time during the campaign. It doesn't matter. That's part of the process. But together, we're all going to have to support the leader.
And I asked Ms. Aheer this earlier. How confident are you in whoever this next leader is going to be able to do that, to unify the UCP, especially with an election coming up in the spring?
It's a collective effort. I mean, the leader obviously has to set the tone and has to lead, but certainly caucus also has to take that responsibility and understand that this onus is on everybody. We're all in it together. I hate to use that phrase, but that is exactly true. So the leader obviously has to lead, but we also have to make sure that that we are responsible and we're all working together.
And I guess what's next for you as we move through this process?
Well, I take some time off, celebrate some time off with my kids and my family, and then whoever, emerges victorious today is going to set the path forward, and we all just get back to work. It's been a long summer. I'm looking forward to getting back to my constituents and getting back in the office.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Rajan Sawhney, and we'll bring it back to you guys in the studio here as we now get ready for round 4.
All right, thanks very much to Adam, and very classy interview there from Rajan Sawhney. Difficult night, but she had a good showing in this leadership race.
I think we are going back to Tom now. Tom, much closer than we thought here. And we saw Cynthia Moore calling for unity off the top of the coverage. Are we watching a fight for the soul of the party here?
I don't know. It's tough to say, right? Like leadership contests, they are divisive by nature, right? Year out. And look, we saw in this campaign, Danielle Smith bring out the Sovereignty Act and talk about what that would mean. And candidates like Brian Jean call it a fairy tale. Travis Toews talk about how he believes it would scare off investment. And Danielle Smith firing back saying, no, this is constitutional, this would work. So they're obviously on that issue. There was a fight in this leadership about that, but look, they've got a very formidable foe in the NDP coming up in the next election. So, look, we see this in conservative politics. They will come together behind a leader when it comes to going into the election. Let's see how that election goes, and whoever's leading at that time, if they win, they win. If they don't win, then it could get interesting all over again.
All right, thanks very much, Tom Vernon, live in Calgary. We're going to go over to Sarah Reid, who is here in Edmonton at that watch party over the Edmonton Inn. What is the vibe there right now?
Well, it's still anxiety, I would say, is sort of the vibe. We still have lots of people making those trips to the bar. They've replenished the food, so people are happy here. I am also joined by Lana Palmer, who is seeking the UCP provincial nomination for Beverly Clearview. I guess, what are you making of the results so far? You know, did we expect it to go this far? It's anyone's game at this point.
I thought it could have been gone two ways. One way would have been that we would have like a clear winner just from the beginning, or that we would go like drawn out for a long time. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I think we're actually going to be here for a little while still.
And all right, we are going to head back to the...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the results for the fourth ballot. No candidate has received the majority of valid votes cast, so we will go to another ballot. Rebecca Schulz, with 8.37% of the vote, drops off the ballot. The remaining candidates' percentages are Brian Jean, 13.5%, Travis Toews, 31.92%, Danielle Smith, 46.21%.
Well, that was interesting.
That
may have been a significant change. Could be a game changer in how this plays out tonight. Danielle Smith going to 46.21%. So she is within 4 percentage points of becoming the next premier designate of this province.
She's followed by Travis Toews at 31.9%. All right, so let's go to Tom now, who is standing by for a reaction to this latest result. Tom.
Okay, so we figured when Todd Loewen came off the ballot, we would see a Danielle Smith bump, and that's exactly what we saw. So she's less than 4% away from that ever so critical 50% plus one of the vote. I'm going to bring in Jason Ribeiro in here. I'm doing a little bit of quick math too to see how many ballots are left, because that's important in the math as well.
And I'm checking the math.
Yes. So what do we make of this?
That's not enough of a swing to Danielle Smith that I think we all expected. And that's going to be challenging. I think a lot of folks would think that all of those votes would roll up to Smith, puts her within a couple percentage points, and then she just needs to pick up scraps to be able to make that leap. And with Rebecca Schulz coming off the ballot next, someone who's in a Calgary riding, again, very much aligned with Jason Kenney's supporters who are supporting Travis Toews, you have to wonder if there's enough in there for Danielle Smith to really carry it over the edge.
So this is really interesting. On the first ballot, we had 84,593 votes. Now this is journalist math for you. I'm in the English industry here, but we're down to 83,310. So we've really only lost, what is that, about 1,200 votes. Yep. So we are starting to see them fall off.
That attrition, yeah.
But okay, so we've got Rebecca Schulz next, that 8.37%, and her number is 6,900 votes. So there should be enough there if they all go to Smith.
Yeah.
But we aren't assuming that.
No,
right?
so some will drop off. There will be, supports for Aheer, supports for others that will render those ballots less useful than those that actually name some of the other folks as well. So a bit of attrition to be expected, but again, that roll-up is going to be really important, and I think Travis Toews is looking increasingly more confident as the night is going on.
Okay. It's getting interesting here. So the next ballot, Rebecca Schulz falls off, 8.37%. Those percentages again. Danielle Smith, is at 46.21. Travis Toews at 31.92. Brian Jean at 13.5. So we're getting right down to the nitty-gritty here. So we should know. I mean, they've been going in 5 to 7 minute increments. We should know here in the next, I imagine, 20 minutes or so, if I'm doing the more math right. So much math on live television, guys.
Yeah.
You're a brave man, a journalist doing math on live television, Tom, but you're doing it very, very well.
Yeah.
When it rains, it pours when it comes to these results. We waited a long time, but they're coming in fast and furious now.
It'll be interesting to see where Rebecca Schulz votes go to now. Dwayne, your reaction to this latest ballot?
I think the Smith people have to be concerned. I think they expected a lot more of Loewen's supporters to go to Smith. She is at 46.2. Schulz's supporters are likely to go to Toews. And so, as I said earlier, once we saw her at 41 on the first ballot, I think it's going to come down to Brian Jean's people. But I think her supporters really thought that Todd Loewen's lion's share would go to her. And while she probably got a majority of Loewen, Toews got enough of them to keep the ballots going. And I think I will be surprised if Smith wins this on the next ballot based on Schulz. I think it's going to come down to the last ballot when Brian Jean leaves.
Dwayne, don't you think Danielle Smith could get at least a good portion of Brian Jean's votes? And put her over the top?
That's, oh yeah. I mean, she's still at 46. She only needs 4% more, right? But what I'm saying is it's going to come down to the last ballot, and that, if we were going to say before the voting that Smith was at a 97 or 98% chance, I think it's a lot less than that. It's still a majority, but it's a lot less than that. And, the path for victory for Travis Toews is getting bigger, but he's still the underdog here. It's going to come down to Brian Jean's people.
And Dwayne, you've covered a lot of leadership races. How does this compare to other ones?
Well, the rules are completely different. In the previous PC races, where we had people come up the middle, that is when you had a runoff ballot 2 weeks later. And all of the votes on the first week were thrown out and they restarted, and you could sell memberships right up until voting day. That's all different now. So the rules here are different. There's more people. There were only 3 in 2017. So this is a first for Alberta to be able to predict something like this.
Yeah, there's no horse trading like there used to be, is there?
Well, it's not a delegated convention. It's not a runoff. People had one opportunity, and membership sales closed 2 months ago.
All right, Dwayne Bratt with his analysis right there. Okay, so once again, if we can look at the latest numbers. Oh, actually, we're going to go to Adam McVicker now. Adam?
There he is.
Hey guys, just waiting for Todd Loewen to come join us here on the stage. Obviously,
our apologies. Actually, sorry, Adam. We're just going to have to throw it to the podium.
Here's the new results.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the results of the 5th ballot. Not yet. No candidate has received the majority of the valid votes cast, so we will go to another ballot. Brian Jean drops off from the race, and the next choices on those ballots will be distributed to the remaining 2 candidates. Here are the percentages per candidate. Brian Jean had 14.83%. Travis Toews, 37.43%. Danielle Smith, 47.73%. We'll be back in a minute.
All right, to quote the chief officer there, not yet, he says. So, boy, this is going right down to the very end tonight. Very, very interesting.
And, Tom, we kind of expected this a little bit. We would expect some of Schulz's votes to go towards Travis Toews.
Yeah, so he took a big jump there, Danielle Smith. Look, less than 3% away on this now. Brian Jean is 14%. So looking at the raw numbers, Danielle Smith, 39,270. Travis Toews, 30,794. 12,000 votes for Brian Jean. Now we'll see how the ballots fall off and all that, but okay. We're down to the last ballot here. She doesn't need much.
No.
She doesn't need much. So
no, she doesn't need much, and I think this was always the way it was kind of going to tee up, is, who are the people that have particular policy prescriptions, and how do their support roll up? And so you see the benefit of Schulz to Toews, sort of moderate position, sort of investment-oriented focus, family-oriented focus, and then these hardline issues, specifically within rural communities, resonating with the Loewens, with the Brian Jeans, and with the Danielle Smith. So the conventional knowledge is not too much to go further here. And Brian Jean and Danielle Smith, even though they have separate camps, they do share some of the same policy prescriptions. It would be surprising to me if those votes didn't transfer in enough of a share to benefit Danielle Smith substantively and perhaps carry over the edge, but still very close.
Yeah, I'm curious because, look, Brian Jean was very critical of Danielle Smith throughout this race, right? Yep. He talked about her floor crossing 8 years ago. He called her Sovereignty Act a fairy tale, right? Yep. So how much of that impacts his vote, or is this basically member by member and where you sell that vote?
Yeah, I think it's member by member, and it's are people such big fans of Brian Jean, or are they a big fan of the posture, of the issues that he stands for, and are they going to resonate with Smith for that? And only some of them need to resonate for Smith for that. And so I think that's going to be enough rather than the interpersonal squabbling between their histories in public life, because both of them have a long and storied history in public life there.
Yeah, okay, so we're at 9 o'clock now. We'll know I'm going to go out there, say, before 9:10, and then we'll get the leader's speech. So it's been an interesting night. We still have some intrigue left. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks very much, Tom. Who would have predicted when we started this night that this is where it would be, going down to the very final ballot?
And let's look at those voting results one more time. Brian Jean, the latest to drop off at 14.8%. And if you remember off the top, we talked about who we thought would be the last three standing, the front runners, and that is how things have worked out. So.
All right, let's quickly get to Adam McVicker now, because unfortunately we cut him off last time. So, Adam, who do you have with you?
I'm joined here by Todd Loewen, of course, just a couple ballots ago. That's where you dropped off. Maybe can I get your thoughts on the results and how you played out in this race?
Yeah, you know what? It was good to see such a strong showing for myself and my team. We worked hard. We covered the province. But you know what? We came up short, and that's okay. I guess I wasn't good enough at selling a vision and getting that support that I needed. But it's good to see, the vote continues. The people's votes are still being counted. So we'll see what happens here in the next round. But it's kind of looking like a Danielle Smith victory, pretty close. So.
Well, that's what I was going to ask now. Next, what are your expectations, especially after this next ballot? Could this be the ballot?
Yeah, this will be it, I'm sure. I mean, with Brian dropping off, then Danielle needs 2.3% now to get over 50. So I think it's looking pretty positive for her right now.
And so with that prospect in sight, I mean, what do you expect from Danielle Smith if she is crowned or elected leader this evening?
You know what? I think the party will get behind her. I think she's ran a good campaign. She's captured the attention of the province, and it'll be good to see everything come back together. There's a caucus meeting tomorrow morning. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, but I'm sure we'll have a party back together and moving forward to fight the NDP in 2023.
I guess, what do you make of the energy in the room this evening as we await these results here?
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of energy here, lots of people cheering every time the votes are announced and everything. So it's good to see. Packed place and lots of energy, lots of people coming up and saying hi and congratulations. It's a really good feeling here tonight.
Todd Loewen, really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for this, and we'll go back to you guys in studio. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Adam. We're going to go back to Tom Vernon now, who has Brian Jean, I believe, with him. Tom.
Yeah, so we've got Brian Jean standing here, the next candidate off the ballot. I guess, first of all, how do you feel about how your campaign performed here tonight?
I think my campaign team did very well. I think we talked about some very important issues to Albertans. Unfortunately, the campaign went a different way, but I think people wanted to talk about, affordability and healthcare and education and justice, but we got a little sidetracked there. But I think that's what's important coming up, and that's what we're going to talk about in the major campaign in the general election.
Were you running that? That's your future?
Oh, absolutely. I see it now. I'm very excited about a unified party that's going forward and appealing to Albertans, and I think all the campaigns did really well, and we brought a lot of things to light that people wanted to talk about, and some things that other people didn't want to talk about. But the truth is that we need to talk about everything so that we can identify the best way forward for Albertans.
Do you think this party can come together after this? We have two very clear decisions left here, and we're about to get the final results here.
Well, it is about unifying the party. It's about unifying party members, and more important than anything is unifying Albertans so we can take on the NDP and beat them in the next election.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
We are going off to the podium.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the results of the 6th ballot. Our members have elected a new leader. Please welcome the next Premier of our province, Danielle Smith.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm back. Well, if you're wondering why I wasn't nervous tonight, I must thank Leela Aheer, whose grandma's watching from the Goodfish Reserve, and she gave me these peace beads at the very beginning of the evening, and Leila, they worked. So thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. And you should also know the family connection that we have with our returning officer. Rick Orman was the very first campaign that I worked on in 1992 when he was running for leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party. And the reason I supported him is because he and my dad played football together at Crescent Heights. And Dad is here this evening as well, Rick, if you want to go over and say hello. So I'm just so delighted that our big Conservative family is all together in one room, united and strong. My fellow Albertans, over the last 117 years, we have written a remarkable story together. It's a story of pioneers and farmers, entrepreneurs and innovators, communities and families. A place where the best and brightest come from every corner of this world to join with us in building one of the greatest places on earth to live, to work, and to raise our families. Tonight marks the beginning of a new chapter in the Alberta story. It is time for Alberta to take its place as a senior partner in building a strong and unified Canada. No longer will Alberta ask permission from Ottawa to be prosperous and free. We will not have our voices silenced and censored. We will not be told what we must put in our bodies in order to work or to travel. We will not have our resources landlocked or our energy phased out of existence by virtue-signaling prime ministers. Albertans, not Ottawa, will chart our own destiny on our own terms, and we will work with our fellow Canadians to build the most free and prosperous country on earth. Before speaking further, I wanted to just thank first and foremost my husband, David. It's funny, when I started running again, somebody asked me if I'd gotten divorced, because David's standard answer when anyone asked me if I was getting in politics again was, yeah, she's welcome to get back into politics with her new husband. He still loves me after all this. Imagine that. My wonderful parents, Doug and Sharon, are here this evening, as my Uncle Blaine and my brother Doug and his wife Carrie. I'm delighted to have my family with me. But I do also want to congratulate and thank my fellow leadership candidates, not only for their commitment to the party, but also to democracy. Over the last several months, these great men and women have placed their lives on hold and sacrificed greatly because they love this province with all their hearts. They want to see our province move forward with strength and prosperity as much as anyone in Alberta. I want to thank Travis Toews for his integrity and for leading the charge in bringing our province's budget back to surplus from the brink of disaster under Rachel Notley's NDP. Alberta and our caucus are going to lean heavily on your strength and experience in the months and years ahead. I also want to thank Brian Jean for his passion and commitment to the grassroots and to making life more affordable for millions of Albertans suffering from the inflation crisis brought on by the NDP Liberal coalition in Ottawa. Thank you. And on a personal note, I want to thank Brian for showing leadership after I made a mistake in judgment in 2014. Learning from your example has prepared me for today, and this party will always owe you a debt of gratitude as one of the founders of this United Conservative Party. Thank you, Brian. I also want to recognize Rebecca Schulz for her compassion, class, and innovative ideas. Rebecca, you are one of the brightest lights in our province, and I can't wait to work with you to ensure so many of those great ideas become a reality. To Todd Loewen. Thank you so much for reminding us that MLAs are the voice of the people in government, not the government's mouthpiece to the people. And I look forward to working with you to ensure caucus lives by that principle moving forward. And on that note, I understand that over this last week, Todd, your fellow UCP MLAs indicated overwhelmingly in favor of you to rejoin the UCP caucus. And I invite you to attend our caucus meeting tomorrow morning so we can get back to work. So thanks so much and welcome back, Todd. I also want to thank Rajan Sawhney for her class and commitment to vulnerable and senior Albertans, and I look forward to advancing those causes together, Rajan. And to Leela Aheer, thank you for your passion and commitment to serving Albertans, even if that means fighting a cowboy who's fallen off a bull. Or fighting a bull is to save a fallen cowboy. Thanks, Leela. I want to thank each and every one of you who ran. You're all great Albertans, and I look forward to serving alongside you. I would be remiss as well if I did not thank my friend, Premier Jason Kenney. Let us remember that Premier Kenney has fought for Albertans for decades, first as an advocate for taxpayers, then as one of the most effective and influential Conservative cabinet ministers in Canadian history, then leading the charge on unifying the Conservative movement, running and beating Rachel Notley's NDP, and then governing as Premier for one of the most tumultuous times in Alberta history. Although we may have had our differences these last couple of years on a couple of matters of policy, I want him to know that I admire and respect him. Thank you, Jason, for being such a loyal Canadian and a giant in the Conservative movement. Thank you, Premier. And a special thanks to my campaign team, who dedicated the last few months of their lives to helping us get to this moment. I simply wouldn't be here without you. And I should name just a few. The leadership of Matt Altheim, my campaign manager from Edmonton. Yeah, You'll be happy to know he knows how to beat NDP in their own backyard. That's why we got him on our team. And Rob Anderson, who's been such a great support for me over the years, an incredible policy advisor. Thank you. And also the other team, I have to tell you, one of my campaign members would always introduce our team saying, we've got an LPN, an electrician, at-home moms, a single mom, a PhD, and a yak farmer. And that is no joke. Every campaign needs a yak farmer. And finally, thank you to our almost 125,000 UCP members and the thousands of volunteers from every campaign in all corners of our province. Thank you for loving and serving our province. Thank you for the hours spent fighting for your party, your candidate, and for the values that they represent. If there's one thing I've learned about Albertans, it's that we don't expect our leaders to be perfect, but we do expect them to stay humble, admit when they're wrong, and to learn from their mistakes. I love that about our province, and I'm grateful to have earned this second chance from you. I will never forget it, and I pledge to you tonight, I will not let you down. My friends, tonight I invite all United Conservative Party supporters, our party, our caucus, fellow leadership candidates, all of us, regardless of who we supported during this leadership race, to come together and unite for the good of our great province. Albertans want us to be unified. They want us to succeed. Albertans don't want to elect a socialist NDP government any more than they want to see the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup. Sorry, honey. David's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. However, my friends, Albertans will no longer tolerate infighting and disunity. They rightly expect their provincial Conservative Party to be competent, cooperative, and unified against the constant threat posed to our economy by the NDP Liberal coalition in Ottawa. Unity is not a talking point. It is an action. It is something you practice rather than preach. Now is not the time for settling old scores or rivalries. It's not the time to punish our fellow Conservatives for past mistakes. This is why, as Premier and leader of this party, I am wiping the slate clean. The membership has spoken. They have given us direction on how they want us to stand up to Ottawa and protect our freedoms, and we will follow our members' direction on this without delay. However, every single UCP MLA, regardless of who they supported or what they have said or what decisions they have made in the past, good or bad, is not important at this moment. All that matters now is that what we do to serve Albertans from this day forward. And I want to invite each of our MLAs, our members, our volunteers, our supporters, every single one of you to join me to govern with strength and compassion, to protect our fellow Albertans from the NDP Liberal coalition in Ottawa, and to lead this party to a resounding victory against the NDP in 2023. To win in 2023, we need to focus on the issues Albertans are most concerned with. As you know, Canada and Alberta are in the midst of an inflation and affordability crisis that has been primarily caused by the fiscally destructive policies of the NDP coalition with the Liberals in Ottawa. When you flood the money supply with hundreds of billions in new spending and pursue policies that spike the price of energy and transportation, the result is crippling inflation that is hurting a sizable majority of Albertans. The 30-year-old university graduate living in her parents' basement because she can't afford the damage deposit on a rental. The single mom who has to resort to smaller and less nutritious meals for her young son and daughter because she can't make the budget stretch any further. The working father forced to take extra shifts and overtime because if he doesn't, he won't be able to pay for the extra interest being charged on the family's mortgage from repeated interest rate hikes. And the senior living on a fixed income, anxious about how they're going to afford to pay for their needed prescriptions when their power and heating bills increase this coming winter. These are not uncommon stories. They are not exceptions to the rule. I've been speaking with hundreds of these Albertans for months. Albertans and all Canadians are suffering terribly every day at the hands of an inflation and affordability crisis. And that is why I find it so callous that in the middle of this crisis, the NDP Liberal coalition in Ottawa just decided to triple the carbon tax. This will only make energy and groceries and food and fuel and housing more expensive, everything we need to live. And I find it incomprehensible that Rachel Notley has so far refused to call on her federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, to lobby his taxing cohort, Justin Trudeau, to reverse that terrible decision hurting Alberta families. There is no excuse for any party leader seeking to be Premier of Alberta to sacrifice the welfare of Albertans for the sake of towing the line of her federal party. It is time for Ms. Notley to put the welfare of Albertans above the anti-Alberta policies of her federal NDP leader. She is not putting Alberta first, and that's the difference between us. I will always, always put Albertans first. No apologies. Clearly, Albertans want nothing to do with the Notley-Singh-Trudeau alliance of economic destruction. But to earn the trust of Albertans, we need to do more than just stand up to the NDP Liberal coalition. We must do more than be the party of economic growth and balanced budgets and debt reduction and lower taxes. That's just part of who we are as a party and as a government. But we also need to show Albertans that we can be trusted to compassionately care for our vulnerable and our seniors, especially in this time of crippling inflation. We need to reform the dysfunction of Alberta Health Services and repair our broken EMS services with swift, decisive action. That also means repairing our relationship with nurses and doctors. It means replacing managers with frontline staff. It means attracting additional health professionals from around the world. And it means that, as Premier, when I direct AHS management to double ICU capacity by a specific date and give them the resources to do so, that direction is followed immediately. And if they can't do that, then we will find others who can do it for them. Although we will always balance the budget and control increases in spending, we must also demonstrate the compassion Albertans expect of us by ensuring the vulnerable can afford the necessities of life during this inflationary crisis. We must ensure our teachers, our children have the teachers and education assistants and tutors that they need to succeed, especially after the disruption to education over the last couple of years. We must address the mental health and opioid crisis that is stealing our young people from us. And we must give a hand up, a warm hug, real hope and real help to those on our streets who don't know where else to turn. We are Albertans. Yes, we are entrepreneurs and business people and fiscally prudent, but we also have heart and compassion that matches the size of our mountains. Our generous compassion is the very soul of Alberta, and Albertans demand a government that reflects that compassion, especially in times like these. As Premier, I will ensure we act swiftly to demonstrate exactly that. Now, friends, in the months ahead, we must recognize that there are those in Ottawa and the establishment, even some in Alberta, that don't want to see our party be unified. They don't want us to succeed. And sadly, these folks will do and say almost anything to keep us from succeeding. They will dredge up old statements and mistakes from the past. They will use cancel culture and fear-mongering in an attempt to scare and dissuade Albertans from supporting our MLAs and me. For example, it is safe to say that many in the Notley-Singh-Trudeau alliance will claim that my plan to stand up to Ottawa with the Sovereignty Act is somehow meant to move Alberta toward leaving our beloved Canada. That is a lie. What Albertans want is for our province and all provinces to have our rights under the Constitution of Canada protected and respected by an increasingly hostile Ottawa regime that seeks to control every aspect of our lives. From healthcare to education to free speech to delivery of our social programs, they want to control it all. because that makes it easier for them to impose their agenda on Albertans and on Canadians. That is not the way to unify a country or secure prosperity. That is a road to division and economic ruin, which is why, in closing tonight, I want to speak to our fellow Canadians. Albertans love Canada. It is our country, our home. All we want is to live, grow, and prosper in the manner that we choose. We want to set our own course, develop our resources and economy, and run our social programs and society as we think best. We also want to share our prosperity with the entire country. So tonight, I invite every Canadian to partner with us. Partner with Alberta. Let's work together to build the strong, prosperous, and unified Canada that we know that we can be. A Canada where provinces work together and empower one another to reach our unique individual goals and aspirations. A Canada that celebrates our great diversity of opinion and thought, rather than one that demonizes and sanctions one another for expression and speech deemed unacceptable by woke politicians in Ottawa. A Canada that respects all of our citizens, regardless of their religious, cultural, or political beliefs. Together, we can be the solution to the world's energy crisis and wrestle away the leverage that thug dictators are using against an energy-starved Europe. Together, we can be the energy superpower that provides billions of people in Africa and in Asia with the clean LNG needed to replace their reliance on coal, wood, and other high-emission fuel sources, saving billions of tons of emissions and replacing them with billions of dollars for our citizens and our economy and our social programs. We can become the nation that develops the breakthrough technologies that make continued fossil fuel use not only possible, but preferable for fueling the energy needs of this generation and the next. And we can feed the planet with our world-class food producers and technologies. We can build the most innovative, entrepreneurial, and well-educated workforce in the developed world, where students are taught to create and build and innovate, rather than to conform, obey, and profess allegiance to failed and outdated ideologies. Alberta wants to play a central role in building that Canada with you as an equal partner. And I invite you and those you elect to join us in building the most prosperous and free country on earth. My friends, tomorrow I'm going to be meeting with our MLAs, and we will discuss unity and how to best meet the massive responsibility in front of us. And like you, we will all be returning home to celebrate Thanksgiving, to give thanks for our families and loved ones that for too long were kept apart, to give thanks for our freedoms and the opportunities ahead, and to give thanks for our great province, her wide open spaces, pristine landscapes, and amazing people. And after Thanksgiving, next Tuesday, I will travel to our capital city to be sworn in as the next Premier of Alberta. And I can't wait to get started. Thank you, and may God keep our land glorious and free.
Words in that speech, though, I gotta say, Carol-Ann, she talked about Alberta as a senior partner in this country. Obviously, that's a nod to the Sovereignty Act. That was a big part of her campaign. She talked about vaccinations, a very controversial stance, but worked very well, obviously, for many of her members. She talked about a virtue-signaling prime minister and had some harsh words for Rachel Notley as well. But, of course, thanked all of the other candidates that ran against her and said that she is ready to wipe the slate clean in the UCP party.
And she was certainly very much on message tonight. Fighting Ottawa was one of her main focuses, and she continued to be very critical and combative tonight when it comes to Ottawa. But when it comes to her fellow candidates, she had some very kind words for them. And Danielle Smith, the only candidate of 7 who is coming from the outside here. And so it'll be interesting to see how she shapes things and shapes the party going forward.
And agree with her politics or not, it's an incredibly huge
political
moment
comeback
for her. Absolutely, yes. It's a huge accomplishment, and she should be congratulated for the campaign that she ran. Okay, let's go to Tom Vernon, who was listening to that speech. Tom, I got to say that was one of the more lengthy victory speeches I've heard. I've been doing this for a long time, and it almost sounded at points more like a campaign speech. Again, not mincing words.
No, not at all. It was very much on message of what she's been saying for the past several months, staying on that brand, staying on her message, but also reaching out with the olive branches to the other candidates, which we have seen in the last little while. We're going to bring Jason Ribeiro back in, public affairs commentator. I want to start with, there was all this talk of how will she pivot now, coming out of the leadership race. It didn't appear to happen tonight. What do you make of it? Very, very much on message, what we've heard throughout the summer.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to Premier-designate Danielle Smith. I mentioned earlier in the program that there was going to be a broader audience that was watching. And what I was implying was, the other Albertans who have not been as engaged in the race or not following the issues that matter to UCP members, I didn't expect the broader audience was going to be Ottawa. And so much of the content of that speech was literally in first-person voice to Ottawa, talking on behalf of Alberta. I found that to be interesting. I found, her ebbing and flowing between very kind and ameliorating remarks to her fellow candidates, but then the sort of harshness, critical tone that she took towards Ottawa and specific issues, cancel culture, it was sort of odd to chart from time to time. But I think she accomplished what she wanted to accomplish, and that is, to my point earlier, a playbook that means no pivoting. She's going to say exactly what she wants to say. She was humble in saying that you've given me a second chance. She's been saying that all along, and she hasn't minced words about who her political opponents are, and she didn't mince words tonight either.
10 years after the 2012 election, which was, obviously grasp defeat from the jaws of victory, 8 years after the floor crossing, she addressed that elephant in the room. Yeah. Was it important for her to address that tonight? And all right, let's move on.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of candidates, you could do with a healthy dose more of that.
Yeah.
Acknowledging past failures, acknowledging past mistakes, especially if you're asking for things from them from going forward. She needs the support of caucus tomorrow morning. She needs the support of a wider swath of MLAs that are going to run for her in a general election. And then she needs the support of a wide swath of Albertans to actually make sure that she's not contributing to another NDP government, because you could argue, back in the day, a lot of those moves started to show the fractures between the Conservative movement in the province and led to an NDP government. Could history be repeating itself if she doesn't shore that up? So she did some things in that speech to make sure she has a handle on that tonight.
That caucus meeting will be interesting. She said, Todd Loewen, you're back in. Obviously, we saw Drew Barnes here tonight, so we'll see what happens with Drew Barnes. But in that caucus will also be Brian Jean, who called her landmark piece a fairy tale. Travis Toews was very critical of that. The finance minister, Jason Nixon's been very critical of it. How interesting is this conversation going to be, and could it be the start of trouble right off the bat on her?
Yeah, I think it's about who has leverage, right,
yeah.
in any of these situations. And as you saw tonight, Danielle Smith has leverage.
Yeah.
So if someone has critiques about the Sovereignty Act during a campaign in which they're backing another candidate, fine. If they continue that kind of critique into caucus as vocally as they have, then there's going to be an issue. And like I said earlier, I would not underestimate the ability of this caucus and this party, the Conservatives in general, to coalesce now that the clear opponent is going to be the Notley-Trudeau-Singh alliance, as she referenced in her speech, and not individual candidates in a leadership contest.
This is a vote of the membership, 46%. Danielle Smith, very much the outsider candidate. Travis Toews, really much the insider candidate, the establishment candidate. It's pretty close to the Jason Kenney number. Do you read anything out of that?
No, I think that not a lot has changed in terms of the makeup of the party. These are still two parties that have come together under the banner of unity, and unity is fractured at times, but they're going to try and make another go of it with another leader. I think part of the challenge was Jason Kenney was very heavy-handed in how he made decisions. You saw that tone from Danielle Smith saying, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to bring in your perspectives. I'm going to be able to make decisions with your support. And I think that tone was very, very important to make sure that that fracturing doesn't happen sooner. And if it does have to happen, potentially after they've already won in a general.
You pointed out while we were watching this speech, the optics of it and how it felt very, very familiar.
It was shockingly familiar. Everything from the camera shot that they used, the lighting, to Danielle Smith's remarks was very, very much like Pierre Poilievre's victory speech. And so I expect someone on Twitter to go quick and compare the camera angles for me because I can't now. But that was not surprising to me. It was a little bit heavy-handed for folks that watch closely, but for others, I think it shows that they're tracking on the same message. They've been very complimentary towards one another. I suspect that'll continue going into the weeks ahead.
Yeah, so we got a preview of the months ahead as well as probably the next campaign. Danielle Smith leading the United Conservative Party against the Trudeau-Notley-Singh alliance. Let's get prepared to hear that an awful lot over the next number of months. And no more math for me tonight, guys.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to do one more because we did not get the final numbers. I'm sorry for this. We didn't get the final numbers here in studio. So could you just give our viewers the final numbers because I think they flashed them up there for you guys in the room.
Yeah, so it was, I don't know the vote number, but it was 53% for Danielle Smith, 46% for Travis Toews. So the Brian Jean vote kind of really split equally between the two camps when all was said and done.
All right, that was the difference maker for sure. All right, thanks very much, Tom.
Let's bring in our Dwayne Bratt, who I'm sure is itching to comment on this. Dwayne, your reaction to the outcome and the speech.
It was much closer than I think people expected. I mean, it went right to the sixth ballot and a 53-46 margin of victory for Smith. But you didn't get a sense of how close it was based on her speech. I think she had one speech, and she alternated between, sweetness and light and thanking her candidates and thanking Jason Kenney and talking about more money for education and support for healthcare, frontline healthcare workers. And then some absolute fierce partisanship, fierce defiance. We heard a lot about the Trudeau-Notley-Singh alliance, and she was going to stand up for Alberta against Ottawa, and Ottawa was not going to let Albertans tell us what to put in our bodies or not to put in our bodies. So real themes out of her campaign around the Sovereignty Act and around anti-COVID restrictions. So depending on how you analyze the speech, it was either cheery, smiling, charming, chuckling Danielle Smith or fiery, angry Danielle Smith. And I think that played to the audience.
On the final ballot, how consequential is that for her?
Well, I think it shows she's got an issue with party unity. You're talking 120,000 members, 85,000 voted. She got about 35,000 on the first ballot, and it took right to the end. So what sort of outreach measures? Well, she's already invited Todd Loewen back in the UCP caucus. Does she ask Travis Toews, who finished second, to come back and be her finance minister? What portfolio does she offer Brian Jean? Does she bring Leela Aheer back into cabinet? So she mentioned she is going to be sworn in as premier on Tuesday. That's pretty early compared to traditional leadership races. The question I have is, will a brand new cabinet be announced on Tuesday as well? Or is there going to be a lag between the premier going in and the rest of cabinet?
And just very quickly before we leave you, Dwayne, I just want to ask one question because Danielle Smith said if she did win, she would not call an election before the May 23rd fixed date. Do you believe that now that she's won leadership?
Yeah, yes, I do. I think she has things she wants to do before the May election. This provides her 7 months to do so. But I do believe, and she has echoed this, that she does need to get in the legislature. She is not an MLA. She has said she will run in a by-election, but not in an open seat that's already there like Calgary Elbow, but someplace in southern Alberta. And I'm hearing that in Brooks Medicine Hat is a place that she may run in a by-election.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your insight. This has been a huge political comeback for Danielle Smith. 8 years ago, many thought her political career was over when she crossed the floor to join Jim Prentice and and the Tories. So this is a huge night for her, I'm sure.
There you have it, 53% of the vote, and it went right down to the very end. Who would have thought when we started this night that it was going to go that deep? But it was extremely exciting, and a big night for the party, and certainly a big night for Danielle Smith.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and following along with us. We leave you now with our regular scheduled programming. Good night.
Good night.
Our members have elected a new leader. Please welcome the next Premier of our province, Danielle Smith.